Welcome to the African History Network show right here on 910 AM, the Superstation, the Future Radio. Hey, I'm your host, Brother Michael Imhotep. It is Thursday, January 7th, 2021. And we are live. Hope everybody is doing well today. It's been a busy day. Fallout from the insurrection that took place at the U.S. Capitol building. Instigated by the traitor-in-chief, Donald Trump. We see a number of resignations. Have been announced from the Trump administration. To me, some of them are cowards. They're in his cabinet, like Secretary of Transportation, Elaine Chao, and then also Betsy DeVos, Secretary of Miseducation, Betsy DeVos, announced she's resigning as well. After all the damage you've done, Betsy DeVos, after all the money that you've cost taxpayers because you had to have more security, now you want to resign 13 days before you're going to be out of a job anyway. So there's fallout coming from the insurrection that took place, okay, at the U.S. Capitol building. But nonetheless, Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, their win by the popular vote and their win in the Electoral College was certified by the U.S. House of Representatives and the U.S. Senate. It came about 3:40 a.m. Eastern Standard Time this morning. How do I know? Because I was up live watching it. I didn't get to bed about 5 a.m. I was up after I did the show last night. I was editing the video from the show last night. I was watching the live joint session that was reconvened again after a bunch of domestic terrorists trespassed onto U.S. Capitol grounds, broke into the U.S. Capitol building. We see that there have been the federal authorities have announced 55 charges. There are going to be more charges. They're using video footage. They're using pictures, photographs. They're using video from and pictures from various media outlets. Federal prosecutors bring charges against 55 criminals following Capitol riot. There's going to be more charges coming. There's going to be a huge fallout from this. We see a number of resignations. We see the Capitol Police has announced that the Capitol Chief of Police has announced that he will be resigning. Capitol Police Chief to resign over botched handling of riot attack. I mean, this is crazy. This is crazy what took place. Then we see the story from the Associated Press from January 7th, 2021. How many of you all saw this story? Capitol Police rejected offers of help to quell mob. Capitol Police rejected offers of help to quell mob. I mean, it's so much. We don't have enough time to cover everything today. We'll talk about some of this tomorrow. Probably on tomorrow's show, I want to share I want to share some of the press conference that Governor Larry Hogan, governor of Maryland, did today. I saw that was on the Rachel Maddow show, because Governor Larry Hogan got a call from Representative Steny Hoyer. Representative Steny Hoyer is the House Majority Leader, and he's a representative from Maryland. He has Governor Larry Hogan's cell phone number. Okay, Larry Hogan's the governor of Maryland. He calls the governor of Maryland, Nancy Pelosi, Steny Hoyer, other leadership. They're underground in a bunker somewhere. He calls them asking for troops to be sent in. It takes 90 minutes for troops to be sent in because Governor Larry Hogan, governor of Maryland, does not have the authority to send troops into the District of Columbia, into the Capitol building. Okay, they have to get approval from the Pentagon. So it took 90 minutes to get approval to send troops in. This whole thing is crazy. So we see that there are more calls for the 25th Amendment to be implemented, to remove this traitor from the White House, to remove this traitor from the office. Nancy Pelosi, and Senator Chuck Schumer called for Trump's removal through the 25th Amendment. Now, before the impeachment trial took place in January and February of 2020, I said they either need to impeach him or use the 25th Amendment. I was calling for that over a year ago. I said they need to either impeach him or use the 25th Amendment to get him out of there. Now, all these people calling for the 25th Amendment. Well, hell, if you had listened to me, we wouldn't be dealing with this right now. Pelosi, Schumer called for Trump's removal through 25th Amendment. So we'll talk some about that. We'll deal with the certification of the Electoral College votes. I told y'all, look, the votes are going to be certified. They're not going to overturn the votes. It's not going to happen. You saw the speech from Mitch McConnell even around 1 p.m. before the insurrection happened. And then that evening, even somebody like spineless Lindsey Graham said, look, this is enough. Okay. Joe Biden's going to be president. He said that on the Senate floor. Okay. He said that on the Senate floor last night when they were going through the objections and all this nonsense. So I said, look, they're going to be confirmed. They're not going to overturn. They're not going to overturn that. Vice President Mike Pence knows he does not have the authority to overturn the will of the people. If that was the case, back in 2001, January 2001, when Vice President Mike Pence had presided over the certification of the Electoral College results from the 2000 presidential election that Al Gore lost to George W. Bush. If Al Gore had the authority to overturn that, don't you think he would have done that? He's the one that lost the election. So if the vice president had the authority to overturn the results of the election, overturn the will of the people, don't you think Joe Biden would have done that in 2016 when he presided over the certification of the Electoral College votes and Donald Trump won? Got 306 Electoral College votes. Hillary Clinton lost, even though she had 3 million more popular votes. Vice president doesn't have the authority to do that. That's what Mike Pence told Trump. That's why Trump is mad at Mike Pence now. Trump doesn't understand any of this stuff. This is why Donald Trump needs to call the Jim, James, Paul, and Tyrone Moving Company. 1-866 call Tyrone. Have them come help you pack your stuff. It's time to go. Time to move. They have a 75% off sale. It's good only for people moving from 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. It's only good for one day, January 20th, 2021. Use promo code #DJT pack your stuff. Okay, this is for entertainment purposes only. All right. So look, we're going to talk about the 25th Amendment and more calls for the 25th Amendment from Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer. Other people are calling for it as well. You even have a Republican in the House of Representatives calling for Donald Trump, the traitor in chief, who I called back in January of 2017 and February. January and February 2017, I called Donald Trump the first Russian president of the United States. Representative Adam Kinzinger is calling for, he's a Republican, calling for Trump to be removed from office as well. So we'll deal with that. We'll talk about the fallout dealing with the U.S. Capitol Police and the way they handled. Now they were understaffed. There was only about from my understanding, there's only about 500 Capitol Police that were there when the insurrection happened. It's like 2,000 Capitol Police in general, only about 500 on duty. They were understaffed from the beginning. Okay, but you have to ask the question why. And you have to ask the question because Associated Press has this big story, and Joanne Reed talked about it on the readout today. You have to wonder, Capitol Police rejected offers of federal help to quell mob. Now, for weeks on white supremacist social media platforms, they've been talking about an insurrection taking place on January 6th. They've been talking about that. 3 days before supporters of Donald Trump rioted at the U.S. Capitol, the Pentagon asked the U.S. Capitol Police if it needed National Guard manpower. And as the mob descended, the mob of white supremacist domestic terrorists descended on the building Wednesday, Justice Department leaders reached out to offer up FBI agents. Justice Department leaders reached out to offer up FBI agents. The police turned them down both times. The Capitol Police. So the U.S. Capitol building, U.S. House of Representatives, they have their own police force. That's not D.C. Metropolitan Police. That's not the Capitol Police are not under the control of Washington, D.C. Mayor Muriel Bowser. That's the Metropolitan D.C. Police Department that she controls. She doesn't control the Capitol Police. Okay. D.C. is not a state, it's a district. There's no governor of D.C. This is why there's this whole push to make Washington, D.C. the 51st state. Okay, because there'll be a lot more power. They'll be able to have a governor, and it's like really tricky the way D.C. works and law enforcement, things like this. So the U.S. Capitol, the U.S. House of Representatives, U.S. House of Representatives building, the U.S. Senate, they have their own police force. Okay, so the U.S. Capitol Police turned them down both times. Turned out, Justice Department leaders reached out to offer up FBI agents. The U.S. Capitol Police turned them down both times, according to senior defense officials and two people familiar with the matter. Despite plenty of warnings of a possible insurrection and ample resources and time to prepare, the Capitol Police planned only for a free speech demonstration. That wasn't free speech. They were chatting for weeks and planning for weeks an insurrection. They were talking about bringing guns. This wasn't free speech. This wasn't no Black Lives Matter rally. This wasn't free speech. These were domestic terrorists. Still stinging from the uproar over the violent response by law enforcement to protests last June 2020, near the White House, officials also were intent on avoiding any appearance that the federal government was deploying active duty or National Guard troops against Americans. So that was because dumbass Donald Trump used federal agents to clear the Washington Square. You have peaceful protesters. He wanted to go across the street to take a photo out with an upside down Bible. Okay, and he misused federal agents. Okay, so here now let's so apparently somebody learned from this and said you can't do that, which is true. You can't do that. So they learned from that, but they were too relaxed. And it's correct not to do what Trump did. One, but they're planning an insurrection. The protesters, the Black Lives Matter protesters out there that he cleared, they weren't planning no insurrection. That was largely a nonviolent protest. That's not what this was here. Okay, but they didn't want to give the appearance of doing the same thing Trump did. So that's kind of understandable, but you got to have a show of force. If you have 4,000 troops out there, you wouldn't have what happened yesterday, because they would have ran up on them and said, "Oh, okay, y'all ain't playing." All right. If they were there in riot gear, they had 3,000, 4,000 troops or what have you, whatever, they would say, "Oh, okay." Now today they had a fence up, everything. It's like a day late and a dollar short. Y'all should have done that yesterday. They've been planning this for weeks. So the day they put up a fence, they had barriers, they got all this personnel there, all this. Well, why the hell didn't you do that yesterday? Then Joe Biden did an address today, a press conference, and he said, "Don't dare call them protesters." He's correct. Biden slams Capitol rioters as domestic terrorists. He's correct. But then he went even a step further. He said, "No one can tell me that if it had been a group of Black Lives Matter protesting yesterday, they wouldn't have been treated very, very differently from the mob of thugs that stormed the Capitol." He called these domestic terrorist thugs. He's correct. We're going to deal with this on the other side of the break. Listen to the African History Network show right here on 9:10 a.m. the Superstation of Future Radio. I'm Michael Imhotep. We'll be back in a few minutes. All right, stand by, everybody. We're up against a commercial break. Commercial break comes quickly. Everybody share this broadcast on your social media platforms. Invite your friends to tune in. Let me see. Hold on. I got a call back into the station. Stand by. If you like this type of information, also, you could donate to the African History Network, $, the AHN show through Cash App, $, the AHN show through Cash App, then also through PayPal, paypal.me/the AHN show. How's everybody doing? Oh, man, it's been a busy day. I didn't get to bed till 5 a.m. I was up watching the certification and the objections. All this nonsense. Okay, LaDonna, Angie, how's everybody doing? Follow us on our Facebook fan page, The African History Network, The African History Network. Also on our YouTube channel, Michael Imhotep, IMHOTEP. Just a second here. Why isn't Skype loading? All right, I gotta get ready for this next segment here. Stand by, everybody. Okay, so we're going to talk some about what the 25th Amendment is. I said they need to use that over a year ago. We'll talk some about the speech Joe Biden gave. U.S. police official shocked by apparent police failure at Capitol. I mean, there's so much going on. Federal prosecutors bring charges against 55 criminals, domestic terrorists. Then New York Times has a story from today that Trump is said to have discussed pardoning himself. Now, most legal experts say that the president does not have the authority to pardon himself, but this idiot's going to try it anyway. All right, stand by, everybody. How's everybody doing? We need to push for reparations. Okay, explain to me the process to get reparations. Reparations is a legislative process, Brad. Reparations, do y'all understand? Explain to me the process to get reparations. It's a legislative process. Reparations has to pass the House of Representatives and the U.S. Senate and be signed into law by a president. Read Article 1 of the U.S. Constitution. Congress controls the purse strings. Welcome back to the African History Network show, right here on 910 a.m. the Superstation, the Future Radio. I'm your host, Brother Michael Imhotep. It is Thursday, January 7th, 2021. And we are live. 313-778-7600 is the call-in number. 313-778-7600 is the call-in number. If you have a question or comment, so much going on. I got to bed late. I was watching the certification in the joint session of the U.S. House of Representatives and the U.S. Senate. I was watching that. So the Electoral College votes were certified at 3:40 a.m. That's when Joe Biden got more than 270 Electoral College. Well, now I told you it was going to happen. I just wanted to see it. I was up editing video from last night's show, so I wanted to see it. Okay. All right. So somebody posted here, we need to focus on reparations. I asked the question, explain to me the legislative process to get reparations. I hear people say that all the time. We need to push for reparations. We've been trying to get reparations for 200 years. Do you understand the process to get reparations? It's a legislative process. Read the U.S. Constitution. Article 1 of the U.S. Constitution gives the power of the purse strings to Congress. Reparations has to pass the U.S. House of Representatives and the U.S. Senate. How many votes does it take to get a bill passed in the U.S. House of Representatives? Who can tell me? Don't everybody answer at the same time. Who can tell me? Because I hear a whole lot of people talking about reparations. Then when I ask them, explain to me the legislative process to get reparations, they don't know what to say. We've had this discussion before. We've had this discussion before. If you can't get a bill passed to study reparations, how the hell are you going to get one passed to pay reparations? If you can't get a bill passed in the U.S. Senate to make Juneteenth a federal holiday and give white people the day off, that bill was blocked by U.S. Senator Ron Johnson, Republican from Wisconsin. He blocked it using the unanimous consent rule. If you can't get an anti-lynching bill passed in the U.S. Senate, that bill was blocked by U.S. Senator Rand Paul. Okay, dumbass Rand Paul from Kentucky, Republican, using the unanimous consent rule. You couldn't get 3 election integrity bills passed in the Senate. That was blocked by Republican from Tennessee, Marsha Blackburn, to ensure the integrity of the presidential election. That was blocked in the Senate. You know how many votes it takes to get a reparations bill passed in the Senate? 60. 95% of the people in the Senate are white. If you can't get a bill passed in the Senate to make Juneteenth a federal holiday and give white people the day off, how you going to get a bill passed to pay trillions of dollars of reparations or however you figure reparations is going to be? How the hell you going to get that passed? This is what I'm saying. I'm all for reparations. I'm for 1, making legal arguments for reparations. 2, laying out logical steps for reparations. Just saying we need to push for reparations. Come on. We need to explain what the legislative process is. You can't even get H.R. 40 out of committee in the House of Representatives, and Democrats control the House. If you can't get a bill passed to study reparations, how the hell are you going to get one passed to pay reparations? Nobody wants to deal with this because this is not a sexy topic. This ain't a sexy topic. Okay? Nobody wants to tell our people the truth dealing with this. This is why, this is why I don't play games with our people. All right? I ain't trying to sell you tickets to conferences and all that stuff. I don't give a damn. I'll tell you the truth. All right? We have to understand what the legislative process is and understand legal arguments for reparations. And you got to vote some of these people out of office, like Ron Johnson, Rand Paul, Moscow Mitch McConnell. Now, luckily, Mitch McConnell won't be Senate Majority Leader, but he's still in the Senate. Mitch McConnell said reparations is dead on arrival in the Senate. He said it ain't even coming to the Senate floor for a debate or a vote. Now he was Senate Majority Leader. He can still object to it, even though he will be Senate Minority Leader, because Democrats run control of the Senate. You got to understand, you got to vote some of these idiots out of office. It's a legislative process. It's not an executive order. This is why during the 2020 campaign, people kept asking presidential candidates what they thought, how they felt about reparations, all that stuff. Like, why aren't you focusing on Congress? You do realize it has to pass both the House of Representatives and the U.S. Senate before it gets signed into law by a president. Why aren't you focusing on Congress? Why aren't you focused on the legislative branch of government? Why aren't you focused on the president? Now, Biden supports H.R. 40. Trump doesn't. McConnell doesn't. Biden said he thought African Americans should get reparations and Native Americans. Biden, on page 22 of Biden's agenda to empower Black America, we've dealt with that a number of times on this show. We went through all 22 pages numerous times on this show. I even showed it to you with the screen share. We went through and showed it to you. Page 22, he talks about supporting H.R. 40. But it's a legislative process. This is why I hear people saying, oh, we ain't going to vote unless we get reparations. That's like saying I ain't going to drive unless I get, that's like saying, what's a good analogy? It doesn't make sense. You know, that's kind of like selling your car for gas money, something like that. It just adds backwards. Doesn't make sense. But anyway, I don't have time to get, that's a whole nother conversation. But lastly, let me say this. Article 1, Section 9, Clause 1 of the U.S. Constitution. This is why when you go to lawmakers, you argue law, you don't argue morality. Reparations is a legislative process. You go to lawmakers to get reparations. They write a reparations bill, get support, get a sponsor, get it out of committee, get it passed. It's a legislative process. Lawmakers write laws. When you go to lawmakers, you argue law. You don't argue morality. We don't understand who to go to get what it is we need. So going to lawmakers saying we didn't get paid for 246 years of slavery. Let me ask you a question. How many of y'all have actually studied the history of slavery? Who's actually understood? Who's actually studied the history of slavery? Where the hell did you read that slaves were supposed to be paid? Let me rephrase the question. Who's actually studied the history of slavery in this country? Where'd you read that slaves were supposed to be paid? Wasn't it legal not to pay them? See, these are questions people don't want to ask. I don't care. I will tell you the truth. Where'd you read that slaves were supposed to be paid? We know slavery was morally wrong. We know it was unjust, all that is horrible. We know all that. But you don't go to lawmakers to argue morality. You go to lawmakers to argue law. The whole purpose of slavery was to enslave African people and exploit their labor. 262 skills, trades, and crafts that we had in this country from 1619 to 1865. Read the book, The Other Slaves by James Newton and I think it was Oliver Lewis, 1978. Okay. We know that. If it was legal to enslave them and not pay them, then how's your argument to get back wages? If it was legal to enslave them and not pay them, how is it your argument to get back wages? Why wouldn't you argue what was done that was illegal? Because you're going to lawmakers to make your argument. What do I mean by that? Well, have you read the U.S. Constitution? Go to loc.gov, Library of Congress website. Go to archives.gov, U.S. Archives. Go to Article 1, Section 9, Clause 1 of the U.S. Constitution. That laid the foundation for the international transatlantic slave trade to be outlawed. Well, when did that take place? That debate took place at the Philadelphia Convention in 1787. If you don't understand history or law, then what are you talking about? You have to understand history and law to be able to make legal arguments that have a historical context. 5 states had already abolished slavery by 1787. The first state to abolish slavery was Vermont, July 2nd, 1777. 5 states had already abolished slavery by 1787 at the Philadelphia Convention. They either abolished it fully or abolished the international transatlantic slave trade. International transatlantic slave trade means bringing African people into this country to enslave them. All the colonies or states, because at this time they're operating based upon the Articles of the Confederacy, okay, and they're drafting the U.S. Constitution, all other states agreed to abolish the international transatlantic slave trade at the Philadelphia Convention, except South Carolina. So what did they do? They put a 20-year clause in the U.S. Constitution and said the earliest that the international transatlantic slave trade could be abolished was 1808. So what happened March 2nd, 1807? U.S. Congress passed a law to abolish the international transatlantic slave trade. When did it go into effect? January 1st, 1808. Why? Because that's the earliest it could go into effect based upon the U.S. Constitution, which is law. Article 6 of the U.S. Constitution clearly tells you the U.S. Constitution, all of the previous treaties, and all of the subsequent treaties are the supreme law of the land. Like the Black Freedmen's Indian treaties of 1866, treaties of peace and friendship, 1786, 1787, all the treaties. That's Article 6 of the U.S. Constitution. If we haven't read the U.S. Constitution, what the hell are we talking about? You don't go to lawmakers to argue morality. You go to lawmakers to argue law, because lawmakers write law. They don't legislate morality. So all of the slave ships that came into this country from January 1st, 1808 up until June of 1860, which was the Clotilda in Alabama, all of that was illegal based upon federal law. There are documented court cases of white men that got caught bringing Africans to this country and they were prosecuted. If you go and study the Amistad slave ship case, how many people saw the Amistad? How many people saw the movie Amistad? I think it was 1997. Remember Joseph Q, Give Us Free? Joseph St. Q. What happened to those Africans on that slave ship? What happened to those Africans on that slave ship? Who can tell me? Y'all remember you remember the movie, right? Give Us Free, Joseph St. Q, Jamon Hansu. See, people remember the line "Give Us Free," but people don't realize that was a landmark U.S. Supreme Court case of 1841. The Amistad. Go to archives.gov. Go to archives.gov. Archives.gov is the National Archives. They have some of the original court documents there they have some of the original court documents there for the Amistad case. Those Africans were set free by the U.S. Supreme Court because the U.S. Supreme Court ruled that it was illegal for the Amistad ship to come into U.S. waters because the international transatlantic slave trade had been abolished. That's a landmark U.S. Supreme Court case. They also ruled that it was illegal for them to be captured. They were captured in Sierra Leone. When you go and read the court case at archives.gov, which is the National Archives, it tells you that when those Africans were captured, it violated all of the existing treaties at the time between the European nations. You're dealing with law, and you're dealing with international law also. And the U.S. Supreme Court also ruled that those Africans were never slaves and they had a right to take up arms because there was a mutiny on the slave ship. They had a right to take up arms and defend themselves and fight for their freedom. And they were set free by the U.S. Supreme Court. Well, the reason why they were set free is because of the international transatlantic slave trade was abolished by U.S. Congress, March 2nd, 1807. The foundation of that is the U.S. Constitution. So all the Africans that were brought into this country from 1808 to 1860 with the Clotilda, all that's illegal. That's a legal argument. And there's court cases to back up the legal argument. I interviewed Brother Reggie Marbury and Dr. Jahi Issa. It's probably 4 years ago now, because they wrote an article for Black Agenda Report that broke this down. It's like something called Reparations is Dead. Here's how to revive it, or something like that. But they go through and deal with all this history, all this law, all these, and they deal with documented court cases of white men who were caught bringing Africans into the country. It was illegal. And even when you study the Clotilda, those Africans had to hide. They had to hide them when they brought them in. They had to hide them in like in a swamp or something like that for a number of days. When you go study the Clotilda case, 1860. When you study that case, it tells you it was illegal for that ship to come into U.S. waters because the international transatlantic slave trade had been abolished. We have to understand how to make legal arguments for reparations. Dr. Claude Anderson is one of my teachers. He and I have had extensive conversations on this, and he was trying to get the Black Freeman Indian Treaties 1866 enforced. That didn't work, and he talked about the mistakes that were made also. He and I I've interviewed him a number of times. He and I have had private conversations about that as well. All right, let's continue, because I ain't even planning to talk about that, but I just see this is the difference. See, this is the difference between having a plan and a wish. A plan is a strategy to bring a goal into fruition. A wish is just something out there. I hear a whole lot of people talking about we want reparations. We're going to demand reparations. I said, demand from who? Trump is against reparations. Trump is attacking the 1619 Project, even though 1619 Project from New York Times is flawed. Trump is trying to conserve Confederate monuments and doesn't want to rename military bases that are named after Confederate quote unquote heroes, traitors to the Union. other people to do to you and get away with is based upon you have been taught about yourself. What you've been taught about yourself is based upon everything you've read, heard, and seen about yourself. So when you control the radius of a man's thoughts, you can control the circumference of his actions, because the mind can't do or teach what it doesn't know. So we deal with a number of different topics here on the African History Network show as well. If you like this type of information, you can donate to the African History Network, $ the AHN show through Cash App, $ the AHN show through Cash App, also through PayPal, paypal.me/the AHN show, paypal.me/the AHN show, or at our website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. Probably on tomorrow's show, because I was going to talk about it early in the week. Representative Sheila Jackson Lee is sponsoring HR 40. There's a new push to get HR 40 passed in the House of Representatives. Okay, thegrio.com. We posted an article a couple of days ago from thegrio.com. And I was going to talk about there's so much going on with all this nonsense with Trump and everything. I haven't had a chance to get to that. So we'll probably talk about that Friday or Sunday show, because we have 2 hours on Sunday. We'll deal with that. But once again, now HR 40 is important. A lot of people say, oh, you don't need a congressional study. Yes, you do. You know how ignorant people are of history in this country? I speak all across the country. Americans are ignorant of history. If they're trying to conserve, if they're trying to maintain Confederate monuments, and the Confederate monuments are honoring traitors to the Union who took up arms against the Union and committed treason based upon Article 3, Section 3 of the U.S. Constitution. Most of these people don't even understand reparations, let alone actually disseminating it. You need a congressional study. Why? Because Congress has to vote on it. You know how ignorant some of the people are in Congress? Look up Louis Gohmert, dumbass Louis Gohmert of Texas, dumbass Jim Jordan of Ohio. You know how ignorant some of these people are in the House of Representatives? You need a congressional study. You need a study that's conducted by historians, economists, law experts, political scientists, who then present that not just to Congress, but present that to the entire country. America needs a massive history lesson. You still got schools named after traitors to the Union that African-American children go to. You still have schools named after Confederate soldiers. So a lot of times people have good intentions, but we don't understand this process. This is a process. It ain't gonna happen in the next 2 or 4 years. This is a process. You don't have 60 votes in the U.S. Senate for reparations. That don't exist. If you couldn't get a Juneteenth bill passed to give white people the day off from work and make Juneteenth a federal holiday, you think you're gonna get a bill passed to pay reparations? And chattel slavery ended 156 years ago? All right. Trying to get Skype up. Something's wrong with Skype. I'm not sure. And I just paid the damn bill, so I don't know why it's not working. You would think it'll work. They just charged me. I just got the confirmation they charged me. You'd think it will work. So, all right. Let's go to the phone lines. Let's go to who we have here. Let's go who we have on line one. Is it Aiden or whoever's on line one? Let's go. And I have to switch it over from Bluetooth to speakerphone. Welcome to the African History Network show. Tell us where you're calling from. Southfield, Michigan. This is Wadsworth from Southfield, Michigan. All right, Wadsworth, go ahead with your question.
I have 2 questions for you. The first question is this: what you said on previous broadcasts that stimulus money could be helping the media companies.
Okay, I said on a previous broadcast, let's take this slowly because we got people trying to listen and they're trying to hear through speakerphone. So I said on a previous broadcast about stimulus. What about stimulus money?
You said that for media companies like newspaper, radio stations, TV stations, we can capture get some of that money to help with their operations.
Media companies can get some of the stimulus money to help with their operations.
Yeah, because you said that on the broadcast, and does that mean that stations like 910, or does it mean that stations they're all bigger than 910?
Well, here's the thing. Here's the thing. Let me say it like this. I'm not exactly sure what it was that I said, but when it comes to the money for small businesses that are negatively impacted by the coronavirus. Okay, so it's up to them whether they apply for it or not. There's stipulations that they have to follow. Off, then the loan becomes a grant and they don't have to pay it back. Okay, so a lot of businesses a lot of them can probably apply, look at and see what the stipulations are though. What's your next question?
And my last question is, we know the Democrats are trying to impeach Donald Trump. They're successful. Is there a way for the Democrats to stop Donald Trump's kids? If Donald Trump gets his son or his daughter to run for president, that time, is there a way to stop them from running for?
Okay, is there a way to stop? So first of all, Democrats are trying to get Trump removed through the 25th Amendment. 25th Amendment would be through Vice President Mike Pence and Donald Trump's cabinet. You need a majority of the cabinet to vote to remove Trump from office. Nancy Pelosi, and we're going to play the clip. We're going to try to play the clip because Skype is acting up on me. Nancy Pelosi said if they can't do it through the 25th Amendment, then they need to impeach Trump. Trying to impeach him 12 days left or so is going to be hard, and you still need 67 votes in the Senate, and so that's a stretch to impeach him. So the only way that I see right now for his children not to be able to run for president, and I'm not really worried about his children running for president because they're going to be facing indictments and things like that. I'm not really worried about that. If they have a felony conviction, then they can't run. Okay, so I'm not really worried about his children running. If Don Jr. runs, it's going to be an embarrassment. All the skeletons are going to come out of his closet. These affairs. I'm not worried about his children running. That's really the least of my concern right now. But all right, Wadsworth, thanks for calling. Okay, who we have? Okay, cool. Who we have? Let's go to the next caller. We have Aiden. Is Aiden still there?
Yes.
Hey, go ahead, Aiden.
This pandemic, COVID-19, and there were millions of black people, Latinos, so forth on, that could not get a stimulus check, could not collect unemployment. So if they talk about reparations, we'll still lose on reparations. And I think this is why the Bible calls for blood, and it says the gifts for the heart. Also, other entities will be getting richer than, much more rich, like child support. What's that? History.com. We're gonna have, like it's gonna be like the $5 Indian, now it's gonna be like the $20 European with mixture in his blood.
It depends. It depends upon what stipulations are. We're jumping ahead of ourselves. It depends upon what stipulations are. It depends upon what the requirements are and how to determine who gets reparations. But I don't want to spend a whole lot of time on that because that ain't gonna happen. That's not gonna happen in the next few years. It's not gonna happen in the next few years because the votes don't exist in the House or the Senate. The votes don't exist in the House or the Senate. Okay. All right. Thanks for calling. Okay. Let's see here. Let's try to go to. I want to go to this clip here of Nancy Pelosi. Nancy Pelosi spoke today dealing with the 25th Amendment. So House Speaker Nancy Pelosi and presumptive Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer have joined the growing chorus of Democrats calling for the removal of the traitor-in-chief, Donald Trump, through the 25th Amendment. Quote, let's go to this clip here of Nancy Pelosi.
Good afternoon. I don't know if the word good is a way to describe it, but because yesterday, the President of the United States incited an armed insurrection against America. The gleeful desecration of the U.S. Capitol, which is the temple of our American democracy, and the violence targeting Congress are horrors that will forever stain our nation's history, instigated by the President of the United States. That's why it's such a stain. In calling for this seditious act, the President has committed an unspeakable assault on our nation.
It can be done today. Vice President to immediately invoke the 25th Amendment. Immediately invoke the 25th Amendment. Pelosi echoed Schumer's comments during a news conference this afternoon. Quote, I join the Senate Democratic leader on calling on the vice president to remove this president by immediately invoking the 25th Amendment. Okay, so check out the article. And we also see Representative Ilhan Omar has already begun circulating articles of impeachment. That's a long shot because I don't think 67 votes exist in the U.S. Senate to remove Trump from office. I want to go to this. We run out of time here on 910 AM Superstation. I want to go to this last clip, guys. Let's go to the clip of Joe Biden. Joe Biden gave an address today, and he was talking about how Black Lives Matter activists would have been treated on Capitol Hill. Let's go to that clip quickly.
Justice is blind. What we saw yesterday in plain view was another violation of a fundamental tenet of this nation. Not only do we see the failure to protect one of the three branches of our government, we also saw a clear failure to carry out equal justice. Should be used to say in the Senate, excuse a point of personal privilege. A little over an hour and a half after the chaos started, I got a text from my granddaughter, Finnegan Biden, who's a senior in her last semester at the University of Pennsylvania. She sent me a photo of military people in full military gear, scores of them lining the steps of the Lincoln Memorial because of protests by Black Lives Matter. She said, Pop, this isn't fair. No one can tell me that if had been a group of Black Lives Matter protesting yesterday, there wouldn't have been, they wouldn't have been treated very, very differently than the mob of thugs that stormed the Capitol. We all know that's true. And it is unacceptable. Totally unacceptable. The American people saw it in plain view. I hope it sensitizes them to what we have to do.
Okay. So check out the article from NBC News. Don't dare call them protesters. Biden slams Capitol rioters as domestic terrorists, because they are domestic terrorists. This is what they are. No, they're not protesters. These are domestic terrorist thugs that belong in prison. So we're out of lastly, look at this article. Now, those watching on Facebook and YouTube, on our Facebook fan page, The African History Network, and our YouTube channel, Michael Imhotep, keep watching. We're going to keep broadcasting. Read this article from CBSNews.com. CBSNews.com. What is the 25th Amendment, and how could a president be removed from office? What is the 25th Amendment, and how could a president be removed from office? We're going to continue this discussion on our Facebook fan page and our YouTube channel. We're out of time here on 910 a.m. Superstation, the Future Radio. If you like this type of information, you can donate to the African History Network. $ the AHN Show through Cash App. $ the AHN Show through Cash App. Also through PayPal. PayPal.me/the AHN Show. PayPal.me/the AHN Show, and at our website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. We're here Monday through Friday, 11 p.m. to 12 midnight Eastern Standard Time. Sundays, 9 p.m. to 11 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Remember, right now, let's correct wrong behavior. It's not over till we win. Wakanda forever. We'll talk to you tomorrow night. Peace. All right, stand by, everybody. Skype was acting up. Usually, I call through the radio station through Skype. I'm running through a 12-channel mixer. So the call through Skype to the radio station, and then the audio that they play from the radio station, the audio clips, that all runs through the mixer so you could hear it. Skype was not launching tonight. And it's very interesting that Skype was not launching, because they just charged me for Skype today. I just paid the damn bill. And I tried to launch Skype and it wasn't launching. So let's see here. So I want to turn on the screen share. We're going to zip through this because I'm like really tired. I got to bed like 5 this morning. I was watching the how y'all doing? How you doing? John Ray. And we got a bunch of dumbass trolls in here too. I'm going to kick some of them out. John Ray and hey, John Ray, push your information again, John Ray. I saw the email you sent me, but it's been so busy. We got Randy, Catherine, a bunch of dumbass trolls who I'm going to get rid of. You know, these trolls is one thing. Some of these people, if you're actually real human beings, you must not have anything to do with your life. You must have like a really miserable life to come on here and troll us, because we ain't on your platform trying to troll you. So you must have a really, you know, miserable life, miserable existence. All right. So let's see here. You got Terry, everybody. All right. So let me show you this article here. And I want to go to this clip from Joanne Reed. This is from the Readout. So just so everybody understands, I'm all for reparations, but I'm for making legal arguments to reparations. And I'm not for playing games with our people's emotions, because you got a lot of people out here pimping our people dealing with reparations. You got a lot of people. I'm just going to tell you, you got a lot of people. Now you have a lot of people who mean well and just like don't know any better. They mean well and they're like really committed. I ain't talking about them. You got a lot of people just out here pimping our people and lying to our people, making them think they're about to get something and they're not. and they're doing it to elevate themselves and get whatever money they can from our people, things like that. You have other people who are dedicated to reparations and have been involved in the movement for decades. And they, and you know, and some of them I've talked to, I know some of them, and some of them I talk to, and I disagree with some of their approach, because it's not a legal argument, but they're genuine, they mean well. You got other people who don't. Okay. So this is what I want to do. I want to go to this clip here. This is from Joanne Reed, the readout today. She spoke with a retired Capitol police officer, Butch T. Jones. She spoke with him about how a pro-Trump mob stormed the U.S. Capitol. Okay. He's African-American. Here's what he had to say.
Start with you first, Officer Jones. You spent 37 years in the Capitol Police Department. Your daughter tweeted at me today, which is how I was connected with you. And I spoke with you earlier. And my question to you now is the same one I had. But I want to start with you first, Officer Jones. You spent 37 years in the Capitol Police Department. Your daughter tweeted at me today, which is how I was connected with you. And I spoke with you earlier. And my question to you now is the same one I had then. As a veteran Capitol Police officer, when you saw what happened yesterday, in your view, what went wrong?
I was appalled by what I saw yesterday. There was no reinforcement. Normally, in a situation like that, a riot of that magnitude, we would have Park Police, Metropolitan Police, and Capitol Police joined together. I think if that.
Okay, so he said Park Police, Metropolitan Police, and Capitol Police. Normally, for a protest of that magnitude, especially one, because it was predicted that the protest was going to be violent. Okay, this wasn't a non-violent protest. It was predicted that it was going to be violent. All right. Normally, you'd have those three entities that would coordinate together. All right. Let me just back this up so you hear this.
Of that magnitude, we would have Park Police, Metropolitan Police, and Capitol Police joined together. I think if that was a Black organization, they would never got to the steps.
And you said that earlier today when I spoke with you. You said that normally if there's going to be a big march, you talked about a Farrakhan march where 4 people were coming with Minister Louis Farrakhan from the Nation of Islam, and there were like phalanxes of people set up, and there were meetings talking about what to do. In this case, the Capitol Police, according to reporting from the Associated Press, they rejected offers of federal help. This is what the AP writes. 3 days before the pro-President Donald Trump riot at the Capitol, the Pentagon asked the U.S. Capitol Police if it needed National Guard manpower. And as the mob descended on the building Wednesday, Justice Department leaders reached out to offer up FBI agents. The police turned them down both times, according to a defense official and 2 people familiar with the matter. Would that have been normal? You said that over the course of the time you were a senior member of that department, there were marches and there were things planned, neo-Nazis coming. Is it normal to turn down help from the federal government?
Number one, no, it's not normal to turn down help. Normally, the chief would make a recommendation, then you go to the police board. The police board is made up the sergeant arm of the House, sergeant arm of the Senate, and the architect of the Capitol. Something went wrong because normally we would have the help. No one would have crossed that line or even got toward the steps of the Capitol.
Okay, normally no one would have even gotten close to the steps of the Capitol. All right. So I want to go to the article from the Associated Press that Joanne Reed referenced. Let's pull up the screen share. Hopefully this works and it doesn't freeze up. Okay. This is the article that she talked about in the segment from the readout. This is from the Associated Press. Capitol Police rejected offers of federal help to quell mob. This is from January 7th, 2021. Let me blow this up. I want to make sure everybody sees this. We'll post a link here for the article. so you can go read this as well. Because proper documentation ends all conversation. You don't have to believe me. Go research this yourself. 3 days before supporters of President Donald Trump, the traitor in chief, rioted at the Capitol, the Pentagon asked the U.S. Capitol Police if it needed National Guard manpower. And as the mob of domestic terrorists descended on the building Wednesday, January 6, 2021, a day which will live in infamy, Justice Department leaders reached out to offer up FBI agents. Justice Department leaders reached out to offer up FBI agents. The police turned them down both times. That's U.S. Capitol Police, not Washington, D.C. Metro Police that are under control of Mayor Muriel Bowser. This is U.S. Capitol Police. U.S. Capitol Police turned them down both times, according to senior defense officials and 2 people familiar with the matter. Despite plenty of warnings of a possible insurrection and ample resources and time to prepare, the Capitol Police planned only for a free speech demonstration. But there was ample warning that it was not going to be a free speech demonstration. There was ample warning that it was going to be an insurrection. It was ample warning that some of them were coming armed. Can y'all see this? Look at this again. Okay. Look at this again. And we got some of these ignorant ass trolls on here. And it's like some of these people, some of them are bots and some of them, their mother and father, brother and sister, stuff like that. But okay. I just block. I don't have time to deal with stupidity like that. So can you all see this? I want to make sure you can see the article here. Let's try to blow it up a little more. There we go. Despite plenty of warnings of a possible insurrection and ample resources and time to prepare, the Capitol Police planned only for a free speech demonstration. Still stinging from the uproar over the violent response by law enforcement to protests last June near the White House, officials also were intent on avoiding any appearance that the federal government was deploying active duty or National Guard troops against Americans. Okay. So because they didn't want a repeat of the scene from Trump using federal troops against federal agents against peaceful protesters. But there was ample warning that these were not going to be peaceful protesters. And I can understand the optics. I can understand them wanting to avoid the optics. But there was ample warnings of an insurrection. So you have to prepare for that. That's different than the Black Lives Matter protests. There was ample warning of an insurrection. Now, probably on Thursday's show, I want to get the I want to get the audio of the clip from Governor Larry Hogan of Maryland. Okay, because he did a press conference today that talked about how long it took to get I think it was the National Guard to the U.S. Capitol building. And Larry Hogan is the governor of Maryland. Okay. And so the whole thing was a debacle. So we see why the Capitol Police Chief is going to resign over botched handling of riot attack. U.S. Capitol Police Chief Stephen Sund, S-U-N-D, announced his resignation effective January 16th, 2021, a decision that came hours after House Speaker Nancy Pelosi publicly called on him to step down over the department's handling of the violent pro-Trump siege of the U.S. Capitol. Okay, let's go back to this article. Okay. Four protesters died, including one shot inside the building. As of January 7th, thehill.com has an article dealing with this. With 55 people being charged. Let me see, where is that one here? Yeah, federal prosecutors bring charges against 55 following Capitol riot. We'll talk some more about this on the Friday show. So the rioting and loss of control has raised serious questions over security at the Capitol for future events. The actions of the day also raised troubling concerns about the treatment of mainly white Trump supporters who were allowed to roam through the building for hours, while black and brown protesters who demonstrated last year over police brutality faced more robust and aggressive policing. Quote, "This was a failure of imagination, a failure of leadership," said Houston Police Chief Art Acevedo, whose department responded to several large protests in 2020 following the death of George Floyd. Quote, "The Capitol Police must do better, and I don't see how we can get around that." Now, Acevedo said he has attended events on the Capitol grounds to honor slain police officers that had higher fences and a stronger security presence than what we saw on video on Wednesday. Army Secretary Ryan McCarthy said that as the rioting was underway, it became clear that the Capitol Police were overrun. But he said there was no contingency plan done in advance for what forces could do in case of a problem at the Capitol because Defense Department help was turned down. Quote, "They've got to ask us. The request has to come to us," end quote, Army Secretary Ryan McCarthy said. U.S. Capitol Police Chief Stephen Sund, S-U-N-D, under pressure from Schumer and Pelosi and other congressional leaders, was forced to resign. Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell asked for and received the resignation of the Sergeant at Arms of the Senate, Michael Stenger, effective immediately. Paul Irving, the longtime Sergeant at Arms of the House, also resigned. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi said that there was a failure of leadership at the top. Now, the U.S. Capitol has been closed to the public since March 2020 because of the COVID-19 pandemic, which has now killed more than 360,000 people in the U.S. But normally, the building is open to the public, and lawmakers pride themselves on their ability to constitute. So the U.S. Capitol building and the U.S. Capitol is designed to be open to give access to constituents to be able to come in, meet with their members of the House of Representatives, meet with their members of the U.S. Senate, things like that. So there is a Capitol Police force, but the building is designed to be open also. Now, it's not clear how many officers were on duty Wednesday, but the complex is policed by a total of 2,300 officers for 1,600 acres of ground who protect the 435 House representatives, members of the House of Representatives, 435 members of the House of Representatives, 100 U.S. senators and their staff. By comparison, the city of Minneapolis, Minnesota, has about 840 uniformed officers policing a population of 425,000 people in a 6,000 acre area. So from my understanding, former Senator Claire McCaskill, who's a contributor on MSNBC, she was talking about this either yesterday or today. And she said, from her understanding, that there was about 500 officers on duty for U.S. Capitol Police on duty. And she said it's a force of something like 2,000. All right. So they were understaffed also. Not just, it wasn't just that they didn't have a contingency plan, is that the U.S. Capitol Police that were there, they were understaffed as well. There were signs for weeks that violence could strike on January 6th when Congress convened for a joint session to finish counting the Electoral College votes that would confirm Democrat Joe Biden had won the presidential election. There was chatter on these white supremacist platforms and social media platforms, things like that, for weeks. There were signs for weeks that violence could strike on January 6th. On far right message boards and in pro-Trump circles, plans were being made. The leader of the far right extremist group Proud Boys was arrested coming into the nation's capital this week on a weapons charge for carrying empty, high-capacity magazines emblazoned with their logo. He admitted to police that he had made statements about rioting in Washington, local officials said. Both Art Acevedo and Ed Davis, a former Boston police I think chief, said anything. Let's see here. Former Boston Police Commissioner Ed Davis, who led the department during the 2013 during the 2013 Boston Marathon bombing, said they did not fault the responses of clearly overmatched frontline officers, but the planning and leadership before the riot. It was the planning and leadership. And this is because I've been going through analyzing this. It wasn't in general. Now it appeared there was a handful of them taking pictures with some of the protesters. I'm not talking about them. I'm talking about the ones in general, because some of the Capitol Police have been injured. And there's one woman like in really serious condition. The Capitol Police were outnumbered. Okay. And it was poor planning. So both Art Acevedo and Ed Davis, who's a former Boston police commissioner who led the department during the 2013 Boston Marathon bombing, said they did not fault the responses of clearly overmatched frontline officers, but the planning and leadership before the riot. That's who's to blame. Read the rest of this article here. So on page 4 of this article from the Associated Press, it says Trump and his allies were perhaps the biggest megaphones. encouraging protesters to turn out in force and support his false claim that the election had been stolen from him. Because he lost. It wasn't stolen from him. His dumbass lost. That's what happened. Trump egged them on during a rally shortly before they marched to the Capitol and rioted. He told them we should go. He told them to go to the U.S. Capitol. Okay. And he said, I may go there with you. Something to that effect. He didn't go with them. He went back to the White House and watched it on. He went back to the White House and watched it on TV. And actually, if we look at just a second here. Okay. So he went back to the White House. He said, he told him to go to the Capitol building. He said, I may go with you. But then he didn't show up. He goes back, I think, probably to the White House, watches it on TV. On crime stance, called for trial by combat. Rudy Giuliani called for trial by combat at the rally that they had. Rudy Giuliani called for trial by combat. Now, McCarthy said law enforcement's intelligence estimates of the potential crowd size in the run-up to the protests, quote, were all over the board, end quote, from as low as 2,000 to as many as 80,000. This is what they were estimating, with how many people they were estimating would show up. This was Army Secretary Ryan McCarthy. Okay. He said law enforcement's intelligence estimates of the potential crowd size in the run-up to the protests were all over the board, quote unquote, were all over the board, from a low of 2,000 to as many as 80,000. So the Capitol Police had set up no hard perimeter around the Capitol. So the Capitol Police had set up no hard perimeter around the Capitol. Officers were focused on one side where lawmakers were entering to vote to certify Biden's win. Barricades were set up on the plaza in front of the building, but police retreated from the line and a mob of people broke through. Lawmakers, at first unaware of the security breach, continued their debate inside the joint session of Congress inside. Soon they were cowering under chairs. Eventually, they were escorted from the House and the Senate. Journalists were left alone in rooms for hours as the mob attempted to break into barricaded rooms. Just ridiculous. So read this article here from the Associated Press. We posted the link. Capitol Police rejected offers of federal help to quell mob. You have to, what the hell? What were they thinking? All right, we'll talk some more about the 25th Amendment on tomorrow's show. I want to look at this article quickly here from the New York Times. Trump is said to have discussed pardoning himself. Trump is said to have discussed pardoning himself. This is from January 7th, 2021. New York Times by Michael Schmidt and Maggie Haberman. The discussions occurred in recent weeks, and it was not clear whether he has brought it up since he incited supporters to march on the Capitol, where some stormed the site. So very quickly here, it says Trump has suggested to aides he wants to pardon himself in the final days of his presidency, according to two people with knowledge of the discussions, a move that will mark one of the most extraordinary and untested uses of presidential power in American history. So most legal experts say, especially constitutional law experts say, the president does not have, or any president does not have, the authority to pardon themselves. In several conversations since Election Day, Trump has told advisors that he is considering giving himself a pardon, and in other instances asked whether he should, and what the effect would be on him legally and politically, according to the two people. It was not clear whether he had broached the topic since he incited his supporters on Wednesday to march on the Capitol, where some stormed the building in a mob attack. Now, Trump has shown signs that his level of interest in pardoning himself goes beyond idle musings. He has long maintained he has the power to pardon himself, and his polling of aides views is typically a sign that he's preparing to follow through on his aim. He has also become increasingly convinced that his perceived enemies will use the levers of law enforcement to target him after he leaves office. No president has ever pardoned himself, so the legitimacy of prospective self-clemency has never been tested in the justice system, and legal scholars are divided about whether the courts would recognize it. But they agree a presidential self-pardon could create a dangerous new precedent of presidents to unilaterally declare they are above the law and to insulate themselves from being held accountable for any crimes they commit in office. A White House spokesman did not respond to a request for comment at the time of this article. Now, Trump has considered a range of preemptive pardons for family members, including his three oldest children, Donald Trump Jr., Eric Trump, and Ivanka Trump. If they didn't do anything wrong, why would they need a pardon? For Ivanka Trump's husband, the senior White House advisor, Jared Kushner, who owes Deutsche Bank about $285 million, and for close associates like the president's personal lawyer, Rudy Giuliani. Now, Trump has expressed concerns to advisors that a Biden Justice Department might investigate all of them, which they should. The Biden Justice Department needs to investigate all of them. Now, Trump, who has told advisors how much he likes having the power to issue clemency, has for weeks solicited aides and allies for suggestions on whom to pardon. He has also ordered preemptive pardons he has also offered preemptive pardons to advisors and administration officials. Many were taken aback because they did not believe they were in legal jeopardy and thought that accepting his offer would be seen as an admission of guilt, according to the two people. Presidential pardons apply only to federal law and provide no protection against state crimes or state prosecution. Presidential pardons apply only to federal law and federal crimes and provide no protection against state crimes and state prosecution. They would not apply to charges that could be brought by prosecutors in the city of Manhattan investigating the Trump Organization's finances. The discussions between Donald Trump and his aides about a self-pardon came before his pressure over the weekend of Georgia officials to help him try to overturn the election results in the state of Georgia and nullify the votes of African Americans also, by the way, in the state of Georgia, or his incitement of the riots at Capitol Hill. Okay, his discussion, but the discussions between Donald Trump and his aides about self-pardon came before he tried to pressure Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger of Georgia, and before he incited this riot of domestic terrorists at Capitol Hill. Trump allies believe that both episodes increased Donald Trump's criminal exposure. Trump allies believe that both episodes increased Donald Trump's criminal exposure, and more potential problems emerged for the president on Thursday when the Justice Department said it would not rule out pursuing charges against him over his role in inciting Wednesday's violence, because he incited an insurrection. And those domestic terrorists, they were trying to interrupt the certification of the Electoral College votes because they want Trump to stay in power. So one could look at that, one could perceive that as trying to overthrow the government. One could perceive that as trying to overthrow the government or interrupt the transference of power from one administration to another. Thursday, when the Justice Department said it would not rule out pursuing charges against him over his role in inciting Wednesday's violence. Michael R. Sherwin, Sherwin, the top federal prosecutor in Washington, D.C., said, "We are looking at all actors, not only the people who went into the building." As aides urged Donald Trump to issue a strong condemnation on Wednesday, and he rejected that advice, the White House counsel, Pat A. Cipollone, who was one of his defense attorneys in the impeachment trial, White House counsel Pat A. Cipollone warned Donald Trump that he could face legal exposure for the riot, given that he had urged his supporters to march to the U.S. Capitol and quote unquote fight beforehand, according to people briefed on the discussion. Trump had appeared to White House aides to be enjoying watching the scenes play out on television. Trump, the president had appeared to White House aides to be enjoying watching the scenes play out on television. Beyond that, the extent of Donald Trump's criminal exposure is unclear. The special counsel Robert S. Mueller III outlined 10 instances in which Trump may have obstructed justice, but declined to say whether he broke the law, citing legal and factual constraints of prosecuting a sitting president. Former Justice Department officials and legal experts said that several of the acts should be prosecuted. I totally agree. Read this article from the New York Times, and we'll see if we can pull this up. Let me see. Let me refresh this here. Okay, name of this article. This is from the New York Times. And I just want to show this to you. I want you to read this. I'm not sure if I'm not sure this is one of the free articles where you have to have a subscription to the New York Times to read it. I have digital subscriptions to New York Times and Washington Post, so I read those publications every day. Trump is said to have discussed pardoning himself. Okay, and then if we go down here, as aides urged Trump to issue strong condemnation on Wednesday, he rejected that advice. And let's see here. He rejected that advice. We go down. The White House counsel Pat A. Cipollone warned Trump that he could face legal exposure for the riot, given that he had urged his supporters to march to the Capitol and fight, quote unquote, fight beforehand, according to people briefed on the discussion. The president had appeared to White House aides to be enjoying watching the scenes play out on television. Now, months ago, I said Donald Trump is Lucifer in the flesh. And people say, oh, that's harsh. You should say that about the president. And say, okay. Okay. We'll talk about Rosewood tomorrow. Let's see. We'll deal with we'll talk about the Rosewood massacre on Friday's show. January 5th, 1923, white mob destroys black community in Rosewood, Florida. We'll talk about that on Friday's show. All right. How's everybody doing? Okay, African American business owners, post the name of your business here on the thread of the broadcast. Email us at customerservice@africanhistorynetwork.com. Customerservice@africanhistorynetwork.com. We'll let you know how you can advertise with the African History Network. I'm working on commercials now. We have some new advertisers as well. Visit workingwithjohnray.com, workingwithjohnray.com. Also, you'll see that commercial coming soon. If you like this type of information, you can donate to the African History Network, $ the AHN Show through Cash App, $ the AHN Show through Cash App, and through PayPal, paypal.me/the AHN Show, paypal.me /the AHN Show, or at our website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. How you doing, Bella Diamonds? Or at our website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. All of my DVD lectures are there, digital downloads also. We have the bundle pack, The Africans Who Were Here Before Columbus. The Africans Who Were Here Before Columbus. And we also have the online course that I teach is all on demand. Ancient Kemet, the Moors, and the Ma'afa. Understanding the transatlantic slave trade, what they didn't teach you in school. Ancient Kemet, the Moors, and the Ma'afa. Understanding the transatlantic slave trade, what they didn't teach you in school. Okay. It's broken up into 8 sessions. It's about 16 hours in total, a little more than 16 hours. We deal with thousands of years of history. That's on sale right now, $80. Watch at your own pace. Do PowerPoint presentation, everything. But that is Ancient Kemet, one of the original names for Egypt. Ancient Kemet, the Moors, and the Ma'afa. The Ma'afa is a Kiswahili term, which means the great disaster, that deals with the transatlantic slave trade. Ancient Kemet, the Moors, and the Ma'afa, understanding the transatlantic slave trade, what they didn't teach you in school. So as soon as you register for that, you can start watching. All right. So working with johnray.com, they are a personal financial success company that can give yourself a take-home pay raise, earn more, and get your credit score up. First, visit workingwithjohnray.com, workingwithjohnray.com for more information. All right, look, we got to get out of here. I got to be back here tomorrow night. And I've got a bunch of video to edit also and commercials to record as well. All right, look, hey, remember at the African History Network, how you doing, Erica? We got Erica, Lee, Terry, Let's see here. All right. We got to get out of here. Remember, at the African History Network, we focus on educating, empowering, and inspiring people of African descent throughout the diaspora and around the world, because right now it's corrects wrong behavior. It's not over till we win. Wakanda forever. We'll talk to you tomorrow night. Peace.